looking back at my last 12 years in business. So I've been doing property management for a little over 15 years. Technically, I've been doing property management for my own stuff since 1997, 2000 was when I got my real estate license, but professionally managing real estate about 15 years. And I pulled out this marketing piece that I used to hand out when I was hustling for business. And I still stand by this one. I think this is something that most people really do not understand, and that is their time value. And I would use this to explain and show value in why having a property manager was a time value investment for many of my clients. I realized as a young buck, I wanted all the clients. I realized as I got older and more experienced in the business that I really didn't want all the clients. In fact, I didn't want quite a few of the clients. But for those that were open to learning and who have been looking to leverage their time and make more money passively, they understood their time value. In many cases, it was very easy to show the value in what we bring to the table for all the things that we cover that you would ordinarily cover for yourself. All right, so that being said, the things that you do in property management, and there are so many jobs. Now, some of these, let's see, looking for 10 years, some of them have changed. I would say scanning check copies and prepping bank deposits. We don't see as much of that, picking up mail, opening mail. So those first four, we have gotten some more leverage, but still about 30% of the tenants we manage still pay by check in the mail. But we don't see them quite as much as we used to. So bank runs, things like that are a little bit less. But your bookkeeping, you're paying your bills, the communications, voicemails back and forth, returning calls, just listing units for rent, screening tenants, running applications, showing of units, prepping leases. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so I would talk to someone and I would ask them like what kind of industry they were in, what kind of money they were making, and then I would factor it and say, listen, you need to look at your income per hour. If you're making, as it shows right here, $50,000, you're making about $25 an hour. If you're making $100,000, you're making about $50 an hour. And then you just have to add in, like, how many hours a month am I doing these things? And I have gone toe-to-toe with people on the time value part. And for some people, it just doesn't matter. If they love self-managing, great. That is all the power to them. Some people, it keeps them busy. I know many much older senior octogenarian investors who I think it's what keeps them active. And you know what? All the more power to them. But if you're someone like me who wants to spend more time on the beach, who wants to spend more time on vacation, if you want your passive income to truly be passive, then when you start realizing how much time you're spending managing your own business, it's not money, in my opinion, well spent. So that's it. And I would grill down on someone, like if they truly were like, looking at my fees and they're trying to understand the cost for compared to the time. There's the intrinsic value of what is it, the things that we're doing that you would have, the time value that you're saved for not doing some of the things that we would be doing for you, such as move in, move out inspections, handling calls, maintenance, things like that. But there's the intrinsic value. I said it right. Of what we bring experience-wise to the table. And that value of the experience and understanding, like the other day we had a hearing. It does happen. We have a very low eviction rate because we do screen it like we mean it. But one of the judges thought my property manager that she was an attorney. And I take pride in that. I take huge pride in the fact that a local district judge would see the client and the property manager. I think my PM was an attorney. So, Andriana, cheers to you on that one. That's because we bring a lot of time. I mean, we've been doing this for 15 years. I think I've only lost one district court case in 15 years. But I have had situations where I've had to go back to court, or we've had to have extensions. But for the most part, I do everything by the book. We teach everyone that we do things by the book. And what's really fascinating about it is that we've actually gotten better. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we're bringing to the table, like, the fact that we know what do these district judges want to see. We know how to work fairly with the tenants. We want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to give them opportunity to right the ship if there's a problem, because the number of really bad landlords out there, especially slumlords, it's awful. It's awful. And I am fortunate enough to have sat in district court with many of them. And just quick sidebar. So I remember going, oh man, I had a couple of stories I got to talk about. Okay. I went to a district court, and I come out winning because we're just doing things by the book. It's usually non-payment of rent. It's a very simple, we're hoping for pay and stay. We really don't want to evict. We just want to enforce the lease. And I was talking to a landlord, and he was just so salty because the judge had just awarded like $600 against him. And it was a building he owned. It was like a 4 or 8 unit building. And he was like stopping by every day because his electric bills were getting really high. And he was getting upset. So he was like knocking on the doors, and he figured out that one of the tenants was basically leaving the oven on and the door open to extra heat the unit. And he, the more he kept saying how often he was stopping by, I was like, of course the judge is going to side against you at side with the tenant. You're harassing the tenant, and rightfully so. So I asked, I got to understand, like, well, who, are you paying the heat? Yes, that's why he's upset. He's paying the heat and the electric on the building. So it's a 4 or 8 unit building. It's a multi-unit building. He's paying the electric as the landlord. He's upset that it is costing him too much money. And so he's stopping by, trying to check up on the tenants and harassing them. And I say to him, like, well, why not just go through the one-time expense, split the building up, into 4 units of electric and be done with it? And he's like, well, I don't really want to make the investment. And I was like, well, what do you do for a living? He says he's a freaking electrician. Now, I'm not going to feel bad for this guy. I'm not going to feel bad for someone who is an electrician by trade and doesn't want to spend the time to divide up his own property and put the onus of paying electric and heat on the tenant so he doesn't have this problem. So, there's a situation where you did this to yourself and you're going to get no sympathy from me. Here's another one. Oh, this was about 10 years ago. And again, I'm in there for simple landlord-tenant. The judges get to know me. For the most part, the ones who remember me coming in, it's a very cordial manner because, again, we're not. This is not punitive. I'm not here to punish or hurt anyone. Simply just in court to enforce the rules. So I come in very unemotional. And I'm sitting out in the lobby waiting for my hearing to be called. This guy, I can tell this guy is distressed. He's talking to someone at the window back and forth, trying to figure something out. And of course, he finally engages me because I talk to everyone. And he goes on to tell me that he's like irate because the judge had basically sided with the tenant for like over $12,000. I said, what do you mean $12,000? What happened? He said, well, they weren't paying rent or they were doing something he didn't like. I think it was non-payment of rent. And they went away for like 3 weeks on vacation. I think it was overseas. I think they went like overseas. I don't remember the whole thing. What I do remember is that this freaking landlord pulled a dumpster up in front of that property, opened up the doors, and hauled everything out of that place. So these people came home from their vacation, and they were locked out, and their stuff was all gone, dumped. I mean, he violated so many rules. This was before the 30-day rule was put into place that in the last couple of years. But still, I mean, he just did everything he did everything you could to not follow the rule of law. And the judge, rightfully so, awarded them like $12,000, $13,000 for their possessions. And that probably wasn't even enough. But I have no sympathy. I have no sympathy for someone like that because it's not what you know, it's what you don't know, and that's something you can't teach that in a course. Every little borough, every little township, Every little parish has their own rules and regulations. Each county has their own rules and regulations, depending on which way the political winds swing can have an effect. Are they pro or against what's going on with your community? All these things play into effect, and you're just not going to walk into some area and just be like, yeah, I got all that. And why would you? Why would you want to spend 20 years of your life learning what I've been putting together when you could just basically tap me on the shoulder, hire me, hand me the keys, and I could just do this all for you? We collected a 99.5+% collection through COVID. And it's not because we're nothing but A+ properties and nothing but multimillionaire tenants. We run everything from C minus, all the way up to B+ properties, a couple of A-, new townhomes. But for the most part, everything we've got is like C+ to B- is really the biggest part of our wheelhouse. So these are average Joe tenants paying mid-level rents, but we screen it like we mean it, and we put in quality people because that's half the battle. And I will tell you, bad tenants make it very hard on average tenants. Average tenants are not the problem. Average tenants are perfectly fine. The problem with average tenants, we're just on the cusp of maybe passing on income levels or credit. The problem for average tenants they are dragged down by the bad tenants. And unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors out there who they just don't care. I mean, they're stealing money. They're living in places for 6, 8, 9 months with not paying rent or longer. And I get it. This is a tough business to be in, and not one where it's easy to have a stone cold heart. And that's what it can take sometimes to have to evict people. But for the most part, a lot of times, you give a lot of leeway, and for someone to really get in a pickle, that's in some respects. Here's another sidebar. It is actually doing someone a disservice if you put them into a unit that they can't afford. What I mean by that is you obviously want to follow all your fair housing, things like that. But when it comes to like income requirements, there's a reason we have income requirements. There's a reason that we want a certain amount of income and a certain amount of job stability. You're renting a property. There's responsibility that's going to come with that. There's things that can happen that if you don't follow through, and this is what I'm saying, it's like when they hand you the credit card on the college campus, right? They just give you the money, and you're not realizing getting that young money what a missed payment's going to do. What a late payment on your credit report's going to do for the next several years, or if you're young and stupid and you end up defaulting on a credit card, like how that's going to affect you for the next. It's just like, man, as soon as you're at the gate, how fast can we trip you up? And for me, I have no time for that. So it's the same thing when you're looking at a tenant and you're trying to place them. We'll get beaten up by other realtors. They're like, why won't you just take our client? Why don't you just take them? Like, because they're not qualified. They're not financially qualified. And if we did take them, then they're not going to be able to live here. They're going to put a lot of money moving into here. It's going to be a lot of startup costs, and the rent's going to be late, which is going to start to incur late fees. And then all of a sudden, they're going to end up in the court system, and that's going to show up on their rental history. And even if they pay it, it still shows up as a flag that, hey, you've been in a landlord-tenant dispute with your landlord, and that is and you don't want that. Nobody should want that. As property management, we certainly do not want to go to court. We would prefer that it was a perfect world and people pay, but there's a reason they repossess cars and boats and planes. And there's reason that people are evicted and they don't pay their bills, and some of that is because of hardship, but a lot of times it's, in my younger days, it was typically one relapse or a bad breakup. Boyfriend, girlfriend, or couples move in and somebody goes off the deep end, either alcohol, drugs, job loss, infidelity, unplanned pregnancies. I mean, we find dogs left in a pond. I mean, this is why, as I've gotten older in my business, why we want to be so thorough on our screening, because once someone's in, it can just, if they have no Mars on their report other than the fact that they can't financially afford that place, moving them in somewhere knowing that they're not going to be able to stay potentially not be able to stay long term because they don't financially qualify, is actually doing them a disservice, because you're going to trip them up. It's going to be red flags all over their credit. You're going to make it very difficult for them to find a rental for the next 5 years, and that's all there is to it. So you have to screen it like you mean it, and I used to think that I maybe knew everything. I clearly don't. I'm always open for learning more, but there are a lot of people out there that are in this industry and they do not know what they're doing, and they don't want to put the time and work in, and they're just going to throw anyone in there, or they're just going to basically move what's top tier and get nothing but top tier and think that this is how it's going to be for everyone. That's just not how it is. This is actual work. And it's a tough industry to be in, but it can be very, very rewarding as well. And I'll tell you right now, it beats running around pounding signs in yards and selling homes on Sunday. And that's all I got to say about it.